Let me ask you a question this morning. How many of you think you have faith? Let me see a show of hands. How many of you think you have faith? Pretty good. Good. Let me share something with you. Listen to how Google, not that Google knows everything, although everybody says, well, Google knows everything. Let me show you what Google says about faith. The definition is a strong belief in God or in the doctrines of religion based on spiritual apprehension rather than proof. Let that sink in just a minute. In other words, he's saying that it's a strong belief in God or the doctrines of religion based on spiritual fear. Fear that something bad will happen if you don't believe it. Based on spiritual apprehension rather than proof. And I'm going to tell you something. That's not how I would define faith. Not even close. Because this definition makes it seem like that we believe in God blindly. Like there's no proof of His existence anywhere. I want to share with you this morning that I have proof that God exists. I don't need the type of faith that Google talks about. I have proof that He exists. In fact, I'm just not sure it takes all that much faith to believe in the existence of God. Now, atheists, the people that do not believe that there's a God, those guys need some faith. They're the ones that need faith. I just tell you the truth, I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. Now, you may think that I can't really prove that there's a God, but I believe I can. And I want to share with you some evidences of that belief, of my belief in God. And I want to talk about that for a few minutes this morning. And really, if I went into all of the evidence that I have that there's a God, you'll miss work tomorrow and the next day. So I've condensed it down a little bit so that we can just get a bite-sized understanding about God. And I want to do this by a series of questions and answers. And the first one of those is, how can there be a creation without a creator? Now, I just really want you to think about that concept. How can there be a creation without a creator? How many of you have looked up at the night sky out in the country or maybe out in the mountains or something where there's not a lot of street lights and just gazed at the sky? How many have done that? It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, it's absolutely amazing. It's awesome. And King David thought so. Listen to what he said. He said, the heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of His hands. Day after day, they pour forth speech. Night after night, they reveal knowledge. They have no speech. They use no words. No sound is heard from them, yet their voice goes out into the earth. Their words to the ends of the world. This is Psalm 19, 1 through 4. And what David is saying here is when you look up, you've got your proof. I mean, how can that just happen? You look up and you know there has to be a creator. There has to be a God. Now, if you don't believe that God, in God and that everything He created here, I mean, if you don't believe in God, how did this stuff get here? How did that stuff up there get here? I mean, without a creator, how did we get a creation? And if we ask an atheist, I mean, here's what they have. Listen to this. According to the current scientific consensus, all of the current and past matter in the universe came into existence at the same point, At this time, all matter was compacted into a very small ball with infinite density and intense heat. Suddenly, this ball started to inflate at an exponential rate, and the universe, as we know it, began. Now, this is called what? The Big Bang Theory. There was this mass of matter, and all of a sudden, this energy came, and it kind of exploded and began to grow into what we see now. I've got a huge problem with that. My question is, where did that ball of matter come from to start with? Who put it there? Where did it come from? And two, where did the energy come from to inflate that ball of matter? Let me share with you from science how this just can't be. Now, first of all, if we look at scientific fact, the first law of thermodynamics says that energy can neither be created or destroyed. You know what that does to the Big Bang Theory? It renders it as nothing. Now understand, this is a law. This isn't a theory. The Big Bang Theory is a theory. This is law, which means it has been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt. And again, it says that energy can neither be created or destroyed. So the energy to start this galaxy would never have come into existence on its own without some creator. Energy doesn't just appear. The second part of that is the law of conservation of mass states that mass or matter can neither be created or destroyed. It can only be rearranged in space, or its form can be changed, but it can't be created or destroyed. You know what that does to the Big Bang Theory? It destroys it. Without a creator, we cannot overcome these two laws. These are proven laws, proven facts, and we can't overcome these things just to get a universe into existence, much less life in it. I don't know. I guess I just don't have enough faith to be an atheist. The second question. How can there be so much design without a designer? How is that even possible? Listen to this. Richard Dawkins, who was an evolutionary biologist, said, "The universe we observe has no design, no purpose, no evil, and no good. Nothing but pointless indifference. We're machines for propagating DNA. It's every living object's sole reason for living." Do y'all find that statement to be a little bit sad? To recognize that you're just a machine to propagate DNA and that's all you are and you don't matter, it's just indifference. I not only think it's sad, I think it's stupid. That's a stupid statement. There's tremendous evidence for an intelligent design. But let's get a little bit more practical. Now, let's just say this is a house that Kevin was building at one time, okay? Is the house that Kevin's going to build here going to happen all on its own? What do y'all think? Kevin hopes so. Well, is it just going to happen? No, it's not going to happen. Something as well designed as a house needs someone to design it and needs someone to construct it. And this is only a house. We're talking about a complex universe. How much more complex is a universe than a house? Think about the design that had to go into that. You just don't have enough faith either, do you? You don't have enough faith to believe that that can just happen. Well, let me ask you this. Kind of work with me here. What if Kevin had millions or even billions of years to just sit back and wait for this house to happen on his own? I understand his client won't be too happy waiting that long. But what if we could just wait for a billion years? Is there any way that I can convince you that if we just sit back and wait that long, that a house is going to just appear? Do you think I could convince you of that? Yes or no? No.
Go the opposite way.
If anything, the materials are, what's going to happen to the materials? They're going to run down. Second law of thermodynamics. They're going to run down. Things don't get better, they get worse. They wear out. And so according to evolutionists, given enough time, the tremendous design that we see everywhere around us will just occur. You know, I mean, there's an equation for that. And this is it. Time plus chance plus space equals everything there is now. How many of you can believe that? I mean, that's like saying 0 plus 0 plus 0 equals everything. It doesn't even make sense. Paul had another idea. In Romans chapter 1, beginning in verse 18. Listen to this. God shows his anger from heaven against all sinful, wicked people who suppress the truth by their wickedness. They know the truth about God because he has made it obvious to them. For ever since the world was created, people have seen the earth and sky. Through everything God made, they can clearly see his invisible qualities, his eternal power, his divine nature. So they have no excuse for not knowing God. Yes, they knew God, but they wouldn't worship him as God or even give him thanks. And they began to think up foolish ideas of what God was like. And as a result, their minds became dark and confused. Claiming to be wise, they instead became utter fools. Now, I know people say, well, you're trying to prove God exists, and this came from the Bible. I understand that. I know this came from the Bible, and the Bible is going to claim that there is a God, right? And I understand that. But look at what Paul's saying. Look at his argument here. He said, just look. I mean, open your eyes and look around you. You can't go outside and look and not see the works of a creator, of a designer, of God. The complexity of it. I love what he says in verse 21. He says, yes, they knew God, but they wouldn't worship him as God or even give him thanks. And they began to think up foolish ideas of what God was like. As a result, their minds became dark and confused. I mean, Paul just comes right out and says it. You got to be stupid not to believe. I mean, translated, that's what he just said. You got to be stupid not to believe. It's so clear. A design must have a designer. I mean, think of something as complex as a human brain. Think about what the human brain does. It processes an amazing amount of information. Your brain holds and processes, or at least most of our brains, holds and processes millions of bits of information. I mean, it holds and processes your emotions, your thoughts, your memories. And at the same time, it keeps track with ongoing functions in your day-to-day life. I mean, functions like your breathing pattern, your heartbeat, your eyelid movement, your feeling of hunger, your movement of muscle. It processes all of those needs while continuing to process and have memory and emotion and thought and things like that. I'm told, and I'm not a scientist, but I'm told that the brain processes more than 1 million messages a second. I mean, that's amazing. I wish I could find a computer that worked that fast. So your brain, it weighs out all of this data, and it filters out the relatively unimportant so that you can focus on and operate in this world. And then the human brain has an intelligence to it as well. I mean, it has the ability to reason, to produce feelings, to dream, to plan, to take action, to relate to other people. The human, I mean, what machine can do that? The human brain is so complex. How could that just happen? I mean, there must be a designer. This could not have just happened by chance. I just don't have enough faith to be an atheist. Number 3. How can there be life without a life giver? Back in the 1600s, when atheism was really building up and people were trying to disprove God and prove that life could exist without a life giver, and they were trying everything, and scientists believed that life could arise from non-life because they saw maggots coming up out of some old rotten meat. And they thought, these maggots are life. That they thought, look, this is a result of spontaneous generation, that life came from non-life. If these maggots could just appear, then we have an organism to start an evolutionary process. And if we can prove that life here can come from non-life, then there's no need to even worry about a God. There's no need for a God to exist. How many in this room knows where maggots come from? The flies land on the food and lay eggs, and the eggs hatch, and we have maggots. They didn't know this back then. They didn't understand. They just saw a piece of meat, and all of a sudden life was coming from it. And they thought, voila, we figured it out. We have no need for a God. No, they just were ignorant. They just didn't know yet. They didn't understand, and so they tried some experiments, and then years later they realized that wasn't working, and so they continued to work in vain to create some kind of life from non-life, even from these from a bunch of different soups of chemical concoctions. And they've tried over and over and over again, and not once has it worked. Not once. And even though science, not even once, created life from non-life, some scientists are so determined to reject the idea of a God that they will actually put their own scientific findings aside and still say, well, there can't be a God. That they will take their own scientific findings and objectivity and stake their belief on something that they already have proven is impossible. Does that make sense? I mean, listen to this. This is a quote by a Nobel Prize winning scientist, George Wald. I want you to really listen to this. It's an amazing statement. The reasonable view was to believe in spontaneous generation. That's life from non-life. Okay. The reasonable view was to believe in spontaneous generation. The only alternative to believe in a single primary act of supernatural creation. There's no third position. One has only to contemplate the magnitude of this task to concede that the spontaneous generation of a living organism is impossible. Yet, we are here as a result, I believe, of spontaneous generation. He just said, with all of the scientific facts that we know, it's impossible. But the only alternative is a God, so I believe that we're here as a result of that which is impossible. Now, this dude's got some faith. But the Bible has an answer that actually takes less faith. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Genesis 1, verse 1. It's amazing to me that scientists prove to themselves it can't be any other way except a God, but they'll believe it anyway so that they don't have to admit there's a God. I mean, in the face of so much evidence, it takes greater faith to believe in a godless universe than to follow the evidence to a logical conclusion, the evidence of a God who designed this unbelievable universe. But the problem is most people don't want a God. You know why? If you believe in a God, it means you have to answer to a higher power. You have to answer to a higher authority. Most people don't want that in their lives. They want to be their own God. And so they reject the idea of God, even though even scientists have proven that it can't be anything but God. But they don't want to answer to a higher authority. We want to be our own gods. We want to be in control. And this is where my faith comes in. I don't think it takes a lot of faith to believe in God. I just really don't. It's just too obvious. Where my faith comes in, it doesn't take a lot of faith to believe that God exists. It does take faith to believe that God can do a better job of running my life than I can, because I think I know everything. I mean, this is my life. I know how to run my life. It takes faith to believe that God can do a better job at running my life than I can do on my own. But I'm going to tell you something. I would much rather God be in charge than for me to just flounder through life on my own. Because I have faith that He can do a better job. What about you? Don't you think He can do a better job than you can do? I mean, I look back at my life and think about all the mistakes I've made, and then I think, man, why did I do that? That was dumb. Why not just turn it over to God and let Him lead me? That makes more sense. I mean, I'm not asking you this morning. I'm not asking you this morning if you believe in God, because I believe that all of you are smart enough to understand that. I mean, the evidence is all around us. I don't even think that's really in question. It shouldn't be. The question is, do you believe that Jesus is the Son of God? And that the Lord wants what's best for you? Are you willing to give Him charge over your life? And trust me, He'll do a much better job with you than you can do. I can promise you that. Now's the day. Now's the day for you to surrender to Him and start living your life the way you were created to live it. He not only just created you, you weren't an accident, you weren't spontaneous, whatever. You were created by God for a purpose. And He can lead you to the logical conclusion of that purpose if you just follow Him. That's where faith comes in. If you believe in Jesus, if you believe in God and that He sent His Son to die for you, to save you from your sins, we need to act on that. We need to follow His design to its conclusion and be what He designed us to be. And that is His.